A lot of you are familiar with the DNA Project and have been rocking with us for a while, but some of you aren't. A lot of you are faithful listeners of the podcast, but aren't familiar with some of the other work that we do. So I just want to take a quick moment to explain to you a little bit more of what we do. So you're getting married, or you have a friend, a cousin, a sister, somebody you know is getting married. Okay. You've booked your venue, caterers, photographer, all that good stuff. When it comes to live music, most people have no idea where to look. We have you covered. Picture this. During the ceremony, while guests are being seated, or while the bride's walking down the aisle. During the cocktail hour, while guests are just mingling and having a good time. Don't forget about dinner music. That's very important to set the mood while guests eat. And we definitely can't forget the party. Let's get the party started right now with the DNA Project. www.thednaproject.ca for more information.
From classics to curiosity, and where melodies meet meaning. Welcome. We're super serious. We're super serious on the Music Explored podcast. Thank you for joining us again, Anthony, my brother, partner in crime. How are you today?
I am doing amazing, man. I am glad to be here. How you doing?
Can't complain. Grateful to be alive as always, and glad to do another one of these great episodes with a great guest.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you intro our phenomenal guest. He's a very well-established man.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different things we can cover here. Music historian, professor, you know what? Music everything. And I think through the conversation, we'll just let it kind of come out naturally. But we're glad to have you, Mr. Don Cusic. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, it's a pleasure. Here. A man who knows a thing or two about being alive, staying alive. You've lived through some things, and we're looking forward to picking your brain. And I imagine right off the top that there's been a lot of changes, to the world, to music, to the way that music's created, to the way that music's consumed, all of that and more. And just starting off, I guess, with your education piece or the education branch of what you do. I want to start off with this because I'm so curious. How has music education changed over the years? Because we talk about like consuming and everything else, but from an education standpoint, have you noticed major changes over the years?
Yeah, music, of course, music education is basically and has been for years on classical music, marching bands, and musical literacy. That's the essence of music education. Yeah. But what we've seen is that the idea of teaching about the music business has become quite popular. And I teach at a place called Belmont University, and it's like about half the school music and music business. And so that's been a big difference to that the musicians can't just know the music, they have to know copyright. They have to know how to market music, and so many of them are DIY. You know, they've got their own label, their own songs that they're putting up on streaming.
Yeah,
and of course, a huge difference in it used to be you could touch music, you could feel it, a record or a cassette or a CD.
Yeah,
and now you don't, and that's it makes listening different because you listen. You know, God, when I was in college, somebody got an album.
Yeah.
First of all, it was rare, you didn't get everything that came out. And you sat down together in a dorm room and you listened to one side and you picked it up and you listened to the other side. Now everybody's listening alone. So that's
very true.
Yeah. So that idea that family feel with music is not here.
At all,
That's true, yeah.
And even the idea of looking at the cover art, opening up the album, reading through it, checking out the credits, all that seems to be lost. And that for me, like cassettes, opening up cassettes or CD covers, even vinyl, because my father had a lot of vinyl, opening it up and seeing the artwork. I think that's been lost in the music experience today, and everything is shortened. They almost cut out bridges completely now, and it's just weird how the evolution of music has gotten, to me, worse. But maybe that's just the old curmudgeon in me complaining about these new kids. But if going back to musical education, I know so much has changed, but what do you think are the most essential skills music students should learn today that wasn't emphasized 20 years ago? I know you said copyright and all of that, but is there anything else you think was it emphasized before that you really focus on in your later days of teaching?
Well, to see it as a business.
Right.
Because that's what it is. And trying to convince, and the students, they're excited about their songs, their music.
Right.
And you've got to, convince them, you're going into a club and playing, you're in the food and drink business. That club owner is hiring you to bring in people to buy food and drink. Now, it's not that, you spend your life thinking like that because you're still an artist, but the fact of it is there's a business behind it, and you've got to be not just an artist, but a business person.
Right.
Making decisions in that light.
That's true. For sure. Leaving a lot of money on the table.
Yeah. The main thing is persistence. Yes. It's a simple fact. You're just showing up and sticking with it. Which, how do you teach that in school?
I was about to ask you, yes.
It rubs off somewhere.
Yeah. It sounds like, I guess, when you're describing, the food being, bringing as an artist or an act in like a restaurant or a club, you're really in that food and drink, beverage business. But kind of sounds like that part has not changed. Is that the way you see it too? Like over the years, it seems like that is one piece that's, from what I remember, has always been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got to, as an artist, you've got to get in front of people.
Right. Yes.
And the way that artists make their money, and this has been forever. This just didn't start today, as you mentioned, is that playing live is where you make the money. Very few people have ever made enough just on royalties. Of course, they've been big superstars, and you kind of look at them and say, "Gee, why isn't everybody doing this?" But playing live, if you can't get over live, you can't succeed as an artist because you'll get bookings and you start at a club. Right. You start either clubs or churches, whether, which way you
Very true. Yeah.
And then and you have a small little circle in your hometown, and then you expand it further and expand it further. And then it becomes national. That's generally how the artists have always grown.
Right.
And that has not changed.
I guess, I guess that as sort of like the pathway has not changed. Mm-hmm. But now we have, and it's been a while, but now we have streaming and all these other ways of being an online superstar. And I'm sure we've all experienced people who have become TikTok famous as a artist in whatever, all genres probably at this point, and reached that level of success, but have never performed live. I've met people who are they've sat wherever in a studio, they've put out music, they've grown a massive audience, and have yet to hit a stage. Yeah. So it sounds like you can skip some steps. Is that something that's discussed in like music education programs now at all?
Social media has changed the landscape incredibly. They're no longer gatekeepers. Anybody can put up something on Spotify or YouTube or one of those streaming services. The problem is, how do you get it heard? And most of them are not heard. It's like dropping it into this endless well there.
Yeah, it's true.
And trying to get attention. Yes. As far as making money, there are artists making $100,000 a year on social media.
Yeah, true.
But, in order to succeed on social media, it's constant self-promotion. Yeah. You have got to constantly promote yourself every day.
Yeah. Yes.
And that wears you out.
Absolutely.
Constantly have new product. And I think for a long-term career, I really believe you need to get in front of people. First of all, you get to test a song.
Right.
Exactly. People are always asking me, I want you to listen and tell me if this is good or not. And I said, no, get in front of a group of people and they'll tell you. An audience will tell you whether it's good or not.
That's true. Even without really thinking
you'll know
about it.
It's kind of just quick.
Yeah, you can't hide from that.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's interesting. And I know you mentioned like the club versus the church, and those are two major sort of pathways that we've discussed a lot on this podcast. I wonder from your experience, is one, like, do you hear more people that have come from one side or the other to like a level of fame? Have you ever gotten into that? Basically like church, church is a pathway or the clubs is a pathway to success. Are there any differences?
No, well, I can't pull out, some examples right away, but what you're talking about is really two different worlds.
It is,
because, the secular side, that's the music business. The other side is really the religion business.
Yes.
And you've got to meet the audience's expectations. The secular audience doesn't care what you believe. A religious audience does. They want you to believe what they believe.
Yeah.
And the pressure is on there.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure there for sure.
So that's the big difference. You're really in two different worlds. Very few artists can be popular in both worlds. The Winans have done it. Amy Grant has done it. Yeah. Few people like that, but it's rare. And it's rare from the religious side because, a Christian artist or a gospel artist doesn't really feel comfortable in, as they call it, the world.
Yeah,
it's true. Yeah,
it's very true.
It becomes like a means to an end from what I've seen. You might have to kind of dip your toe to, build that fan base, maybe get some extra. Sometimes it's money, there's more paying opportunities in the world, as you stated, than there are in the church world.
Yeah.
I have seen a little bit of crossover. But more lately, I've seen a lot more people coming from the church world into the secular, especially on the musician side. Maybe not as heavily on the artist, but definitely on the musician side.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of that.
A musician has leeway there. An artist doesn't. An artist has got to commit one side or the other. Whereas a musician can, I need to play for this act today and that act tomorrow, and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
that's true.
That's a great point.
I think I've thought about it, but I don't think I've actually put it together that way. It's like a commitment thing. They're not your words. You're playing the music behind the artist, so you could kind of tiptoe around a little
behind
bit
the
more.
Artist.
Yeah.
That's great.
They just want you to be in tune.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You want to hit the licks,
Yeah.
What do you think is the most misunderstood part of the music business?
Oh, the glamour side, because you see the award show, and you don't realize that the other 28 days a month they're spent at a desk doing a desk job, doing emails, and in terms of the business side of it, in terms of the artist side of it is how a lot of people wouldn't mind being a star if it wasn't so much trouble, and it's a lot of trouble. It is really a lot of work. Like I said, self-promote, stay out front, develop new, as they call new product. The artist wants to say, new songs. Yeah. I mean, there's no let up. You really have to stick to it. And of course, you wonder, that's great for a 20-year-old. What's it going to be like when they're 40, 45, 50?
Right.
Can they still sustain that? Some can and some can't.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, I guess it's in that sense. Yeah, life changes as you get older and responsibilities change, and in some cases it's just not possible. I mean, maybe your heart would.
Yeah, you got to write songs while the baby's crying.
Yeah.
yeah, right.
That's two different worlds there as well. So I know that obviously we've mentioned that things have changed over time. Are there any parts, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this, but are there any parts of, I guess, the music experience, the artist experience that were very commonplace in the past that maybe have fallen away that you would like to see back or you miss or wish could be revived? Does anything come to mind?
Well, of course, I'm an old guy, so physical product, I still miss it. Yeah. I still have CDs. Right. I am fortunate that the car, and I can't trade my car in because my car has a CD player.
Right. That's
funny. They don't make them anymore. Even the computers don't have the CD players. But
very rare. Yeah.
I think the physical aspect, because you feel different about something that you can touch.
Yeah.
And like you were talking about, reading or seeing the cover picture, reading the liner notes, see who played on what song, all of those things. I miss that. That was part of life. Not that long ago.
Really, yeah, things have progressed and changed quickly. And I guess, another thing I'm thinking too is just being able to touch like an album or have a record collection even. Yeah. There's something about that kind of helps with like preserving the music. Right now, it just seems like so much comes out so quickly. You have a Spotify playlist that you're in love with for a week or two. Yeah. And then you love it, but forget because the next one came out or something else has pulled you. It's not like you get to reach over and say, oh yeah, that's still my favorite. So that's changed. But what are your thoughts on preserving music history? Because in my mind, that is one way that music history stayed alive, was just through having like collections and things like that. What are your thoughts on that now? What does it look like for, preserving music from this generation onto the next? Is it still possible?
Preservation always, of course, you've got everything online in the cloud, but you still have the physical product, the books, the records, their archives. Somebody's got to keep them somewhere. And, what's the long-term effect of digital? I mean, we know some of it so far, but, I've had stuff I put on my computer and it disappeared.
It's true. Yeah.
I go back, a year later and it's disappeared. Oh, yeah. So in terms of preserving it, I think, when I've got stuff I'm working on, I back it up. We got the cloud here.
Have to, yeah.
I put it on a thumb drive, and then I'll put it on the hard drive on the computer. And I used to put things on a CD. Because if you're spending a lot of money on a project, you don't want to screw up to wipe it out.
Yeah, and it's gone.
And so I think that's important. And I think what we're seeing in schools by teaching them the music business as well as the music, that's going to help preserve things because it'll get people interested. Not everybody's a musician, but anybody can collect albums and write about them and do those sorts of things. You don't need that level of skill that a great musician has. So I think that's and just sheer numbers, getting enough people interested that they want to look into it some more.
Yeah, true. Much easier said than done, but very true.
Yeah.
And then I guess there's also books too, because we should talk about, you have a book coming out, so
yes.
I'd love for you to shout that out and tell us a little bit about that. But I was going to mention on that, there's also books, biographies, highlights on artists, musicians, and things music related. I also love music documentaries. That's one of my favorite ways.
Yeah.
I think, given that most of it's true and factual, you learn a lot about an artist's life and career that way. So that's another way that comes to mind there. But please take this opportunity to tell us about your upcoming project and your new book.
Well, of course, Chet Atkins is known for being a country guy, and he certainly was. He was in Nashville, but he was a great guitar player, and he recorded a lot of jazz. One of the things that people are forgetting is that he was connected to early rock and roll. He produced Elvis Presley. He played on the sessions. The early Everly Brothers, he played on those sessions. He produced some of those sessions for the Everly Brothers. And then we get to the Beatles, and here you have a guy who, when the Beatles appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show in February of '64, George Harrison, the lead guitar player, was playing a Chet Atkins Gretsch guitar.
Okay.
He had connections with, and of course later he records with Paul McCartney. Here is a guy who never stopped practicing, and that's a lesson for musicians because a lot of musicians, I know the ones surrounding in Nashville, they get to the point where they're very accomplished, very good. They have a gig. They can pick up the guitar or go to the piano and play it, but they quit practicing. Doing the scales, doing the dull stuff. And Chet never stopped practicing. But he was a real giant here in Nashville, and he was executive, head of RCA. He was a producer, produced Waylon Jennings and Eddie Arnold and Willie Nelson and a massive amount of hits. So he's just one of those larger than life figures that comes through every now and then. Yeah. And of course, he's been dead for like 20, 25 years or so, and people are forgetting him. But so hopefully this book will bring him back into focus.
Yeah, front of mind.
And was that the motivation for you writing the book, was just to kind of allow people to really understand the legend that he was?
That's part of it. People always ask, where do you get your ideas? How do you decide what to write about? And the honest answer, the least satisfying answer, but the most honest, is the subject chooses me, or the subject chooses you. Right. And it might start with you just happen to hear something on the radio or hear something out over, somehow, some way, or somebody brings up the subject, and then you read a little more about it, and next thing you know, you're in it deeper, and it's like, hey, I can do this. At some point, you make a commitment. So, this is what I want to do. But really, the subjects choose you. I know that sounds kind of flaky, a little far out.
No, that's valid.
Profound. It sounds profound to me. Yeah. Yeah, I get it.
Totally.
You know what? I know, Dariki, you have some Nashville things you probably want to get into, if I know you as well as I believe to. But I want to ask you this first. Where does your love for music stem from? We skipped that in the beginning, but I'm so curious hearing you talk about it.
Well, it started with this little plastic radio sitting on top of the refrigerator that played. Okay. And my parents never changed the dial. It was on one dial, stage. But that's when I'm hearing music every day.
Yeah.
And then when you're about 13 or 14, you latch on to music like you've never done before. You've heard it, you've liked it, but it becomes a soundtrack of your life. It's your friends. It's what your friends socialize with. And and for me, that period was my influences were Hank Williams, Roger Miller, and the Beatles, and that really hit me. So, and it's still, and as long as you live, no music will ever be as good as what you heard in those teen years, into your very early 20s. That's what you're locked into. You compare music to that all the time. So, that's kind of where my roots are. And
as a podcaster, you know that great content is only half the battle. The other half is finding the right hosting platform to reach your audience. That's where Captivate comes in. With unlimited podcasts, advanced analytics, and personalized support, Captivate has everything you need to grow your audience and monetize your show. Join the thousands of successful podcasters just like us who trust Captivate for their hosting needs. Visit dnaairwaves.com/captivate today to start your free trial.
And I go back to them. So
amazing, yeah. It was interesting the way that your face kind of lit up when you talked about that plastic radio too. A lot of memories connected to that.
Yeah.
But and you had one station, so for some of us, I mean, I grew up, but there was still a radio. We're still holding on to that. It was still a thing, actually. But for some people listening now, I'm sure they wouldn't even be able to wrap their head around the concept of having to wait to hear the song that you want to hear so badly, right? Like it wasn't a matter of just pressing play and now you get to hear that song. Like you had to wait till the programming or the programmer, however it worked, the DJ, I guess, played that song. It's a very, very different way of consuming music back then.
Yeah, well, my students they tell me right up front, I don't listen to the radio. That's one of the first things they say. I don't listen to the radio. Yeah, which is a little bit of a lie because you get on the car and get started and the radio comes. The radio's on. Things like that. But they don't listen to the radio. And you talk about how things change. And how have they changed? You know, you got an album. It was a big deal to get an album. It was like $4. That was a lot of money.
Right.
$4 or $5. And went and you played those 10 or 12 songs over and over and over again. And now, how many songs can you have access to? And so it's lost its exclusivity. It's lost its mystery. Right. It's lost its, you know, it's been taken for granted. You know, you talk about having a cassette and, you know, opening it up on the way home. Well, here, you know, this, how about so-and-so? How about such and such a song? Wait a minute. And they pull out their iPhone and dial up the Spotify or whatever, their Apple Music, whatever they're on, and they hear it right away.
Even in
but
the
it doesn't last as long.
No, not at all.
That's true.
Very temporary. It's like microwave music now. Microwave music, quick and easy, and then you forget about it once they're done. But keeping in the vein of like change and evolution, I mean, you're knee deep in the Nashville scene, and I've seen over the last 20 years, not only has country really made a giant resurgence in the last decade, but that region has become actually like world renowned, because we're in Canada and everyone knows Nashville is one of the best music scenes on earth, definitely in America. But it's, what have you noticed the most in being in the country music scene and watching it kind of have this new resurgence, where I think it's probably one of the most popular genres in America right now, with that and hip hop and stuff. But country's really at the forefront of, you know, all the big stars seem to be country music stars now. Yeah.
Well, the thing of it is Nashville has always been a very diverse. It's known for country music. You say Nashville and think country music. You go back a few years, and it was the number one place for R&B radio. Yeah. This was late 40s, early 50s. You know, you've got a whole wide variety of music coming out of Nashville. Christian music is kind of headquartered here. I was just going to touch on that. Melody or production-wise, that's different than country. Yeah. The big difference in music today is the technology. Yeah. You can make a perfect record. Right. And everybody is using computers. Right. Well, you know, maybe the classical guys aren't, but, you know, you talk about rap and pop and R&B and country. They're all using basically the same computers, the same software. Yeah. Well, it's basically two different kinds of software, and use one or the other. Yeah. And so that's given a sameness to sound. But the other thing was somewhere along the line, particularly it may have happened with Garth Brooks, country became cool. And if you go back, there was a real division between pop music and country music, and the pop folks did not like country because it represented all the negative things. You know, it was racist. It was backwards. It was dumb. It was, you know, people you didn't want to associate with. You know, it wasn't cool. And the pop side was. And so what has happened, as we've seen, is country has been cool. And a lot of that has to do with the production. It sounds a lot like pop music. It doesn't sound like Hank Williams anymore.
True.
Yeah. I'm also wondering.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me just.
That's the worst.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm sure we both have tons of questions now. Every time you say something, you're trying to bring something else. Yeah, exactly. Because you mentioned Nashville, and I don't want to get away from that because we have a lot more questions. Just curiosity. But being from Canada, Toronto, we see the States probably differently. So when I think of, like, there's different hubs across the United States, there's a lot of them musically that come to mind. But how does Nashville sort of different than, like, LA, New York? Like, what's the Nashville charm, do you think?
Well, you're from Canada. You're seeing us a whole lot different in this past month or two.
No comment.
Right.
Yeah.
There's three places in the United States that are totally different than other parts of the United States.
Okay.
New York City, Texas, and Southern California. And they're just different than the rest of the country. Nashville still has that Southern charm, you know, the good old boys. We're all friendly. a little laid back. New York is high intensity, high pressure. LA is, the ultimate in cool. And Texas is just a world of its own.
Exactly.
If you go there, wear cowboy boots.
Yeah, for sure.
That's funny.
Just kind of, and Nashville is sorry, going back, but I feel like there's this wonderful intersection between gospel music and country music that I know over the years. Even as a child, my father would play like Conway Twitty, Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers, and you could hear gospel influence. And I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and I could feel that right away. Can you talk a little bit about how country music and gospel music intersect culturally and musically? And can you share any insight as to why you think that is, or what you know to be the case as to why it intersects?
Well, a lot of them grew up in a church, and that makes a difference. And again, that Southern culture, and part of that is a religious culture.
True.
And the thing with country music, you can go to see a country act, and they'll have secular songs, and then they'll drop in a gospel song.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Black gospel's not like that. I mean, you're either black gospel, you're either the devil or God.
Yeah.
So you don't mix the two. You mix the two, you get called on the carpet. Whereas with country, it can blend a lot easier. Am I hitting that?
That is so funny, but so true.
That's just great.
Oh man, that's funny. I'm going to talk about that again later on. It's actually something I never thought about, but it's so true.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I guess there's some reasons for that too. I guess the blend of music is a little closer related than some of the others.
And people are more confident. I mean, are more comfortable talking religion. It's not unusual. You meet somebody. Well, what church do you go to? You don't get that in LA or New York.
No.
But you get it in Nashville, and you get it in the South. What church do you go to? Or we're going to have a potluck dinner on Sunday afternoon. All that, where the social life is connected to the church, as well as the music. That makes a big difference. And of course, in Black culture, that's true. The church is part of that social life, that cultural life.
So, yeah, that's true. That's true. It's all connected there.
Absolutely.
I guess just going a little deeper on Nashville. Wait, I don't know if you've said this. Have you always been in Nashville?
I moved to Tennessee in 1972. That's before you were born.
Okay, fair enough.
And in 73, I moved to Nashville.
Okay.
So I've been here since then. So what's that, 50 years or so?
Yeah, about that.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, a lot of years. So how many decades, really? How many, or how much, I guess, has Nashville itself changed over the years, and what, significant ways do you think?
Well, it's become an it city, one of the cool places. I mean, we have all of these bridal things coming in, going to Lower Broadway where all the clubs are and getting drunk and celebrating before they get married. And in terms of the music industry, it's got a lot more corporate. It used to be New York and LA ran everything. Nashville was sort of an outpost.
Okay.
Now Nashville can make its own decisions.
Yeah.
They didn't think we were very smart for a while.
That's changed.
So they had to change their minds on that. And of course, just sheer numbers, of the traffic, all of that, trying to find housing, all of those things that, some hot cities are facing. A lot of people in LA, I run into people from LA quite a bit going, gee, I wish I lived in Nashville. I'd like to get out of LA. I don't hear that from people from New York. They don't think they can survive outside of New York.
Yeah.
And Texas, Tennessee's a road trip for them. Where they are.
Yeah. But a lot of people have migrated to, like you said, Nashville and Texas. Over the last decade, I've noticed a big shift. And like you said, that commercial, I don't know what you would call it, but just like the commercial uprising that's really gotten Nashville. Because I know 4 people just in my small circle that have gone to Nashville recently and just talked about the energy and how great of a town it is. And my one friend that used to go a lot, he doesn't go anymore because he doesn't like the way it's changed and it's gotten really commercial and expensive.
Yeah.
And I wonder if is it possible to preserve what makes Nashville its charm, or do you think that,
Boy, I hope
like
so.
all the other cities, it might lose that?
Yeah, I think it's still keeping its charm simply because it's a small city. It's not a big city.
True.
And so that's an advantage. The key to its growth, the growth in the South, was that it was cold weather up north and it was warmer down south. Now, for a long time, it was too hot. You sweat too much. So when they had air conditioning and interstates, it's a lot easier to move to the South and live in the South. And plus, the North lost the industrial base. That's one of the things, they're talking about trying to bring manufacturing back to the United States. And when they lost that manufacturing base, my phone just went off. When you lose that, you get out of the music business, not talking about music per se, but you get out of that and people just looking for jobs, and the jobs are disappearing.
True.
Of those manufacturing jobs. So that makes a big difference.
That's true. Yeah.
That's very true.
That is very true. Well, I guess
Where in Canada are you from?
We're both just outside Toronto.
Oh, I've been there.
Oh, you been? Okay. Yeah. Good place to be. A little colder, but.
I remember shopping malls underground.
Oh yeah, we have. Yeah,
we definitely have those.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I guess just given your history and the amount of time that you spent in Nashville, and the changes that you've seen over the years, what do you predict is next, or what's on the rise? What can we outsiders look out for next from Nashville, do you think?
Well, I think Nashville will keep going because the infrastructure, in terms of the music business, just music business, because we have 2 really good universities here teaching about the music business, Belmont and Middle Tennessee State. And so you've got a workforce growing into that, because then, you go to school and you have the internships. And if you do good, you can get hired. So you've got that infrastructure. Okay. That's the thing that Texas doesn't have. Texas always hated the business. If you're an artist, it's cool to say, I hate the business. I don't want anything to do with the business. But you got to have the business. It's a important component. So I think it will continue to grow. I think, now I don't know what's going to happen with AI. People, they're still trying to play with that. Right. It's still a toy right now, and they haven't all figured it all out. But in terms of the technology with the computers playing a major role in the production, that's going to continue. And because there's no gatekeepers, it used to be a label decided who to sign, and it's not anybody can go out and cut. I'm going to say cut a record. Yeah. We still call it a record sometimes. Still cut a source or a stream or something. Yeah. I think that'll remain on the creative side, as long as we don't have a weather disaster or something. I think we'll keep going.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think there are challenges that uniquely face country music artists that most other genres don't really actually have to deal with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the country. There's about, now I don't know if this is still true, but I know at one time, and it's still true to some extent, a third of the people in the country hated country music. Right. They didn't hate it because of the sound, because they'd listen to it and kind of like it. But that image that dates back for years, the segregated South, the segregated country, really.
Right. Yeah.
All of those negative factors, they didn't want to be associated with that. And we've seen a lot of that fall away.
Right.
Especially amongst the young people. It used to be, a mixed race couple. Boy, they had laws against it. Now it's just part of 100%. Life. All of those things, the tolerance of the gay community. acceptance, I should say.
Yeah.
And all of those things. So the South has been dragged along.
Sure. Yeah.
And so the young people don't, they don't live in all those old prejudices and stereotypes.
Right.
And that's been going on for a pretty good while. So I think that's that future. You've got a lot more tolerance as a city, even though we're a very red state.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a tolerance there and acceptance there that used to not be there. And like I say, young people are colorblind, and you got people moving in from Minnesota and Oregon and
Over
Texas and LA and Michigan and all of that.
Yeah.
And it's not just having people who grew up in a place and they stay in the place.
Right.
So we have a pretty diverse population there in terms of those backgrounds.
True.
Interesting. Yeah. So, and I was going to ask you a little bit about the university, but you kind of explained what I was about to dive into.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it sounds like the university is pretty connected with the industry and has different outlets and areas to guide students towards.
Yeah.
But I'm still imagine there's still a lot of ways to make it in the music industry. I don't know like what types of students that you mainly are dealing with, but I guess just as an overall, do you have some words of advice to, let's say, somebody that's getting ready to, go into university in some sort of music related program? What words of guidance would you give them?
Yeah, well, in the music industry specifically has 3 centers: New York, LA, and Nashville. And if you want to be part of that at the major league level, you have to be in one of those 3 places. Now, there is a music industry in Toronto, in Chicago, in Portland, Oregon, and you name it. People are putting on shows, having concerts, going to concerts, and so it depends upon what level you want to play at. We have some students go through this, and they go, I miss Mama. I want to be home.
Yeah,
I'd rather be with my family, and they don't stay here. But the ones that do, it's set up so that they can get an education and an opportunity. And the ones who take advantage of it are going to succeed. In any field, there's the creme de la creme. There's the top people. They're going to get jobs. They're going to do well. Yeah. And you got all those other people, that from there on down. Yeah. And so, the music industry teaches you whether you want to be part of it or not. You get into it, you have that opportunity, and you'll find that out. So I think that's a real advantage that Nashville has.
No, that makes perfect sense. In your years of teaching and just being part of music in a long decade history of being around artists, do you notice any traits that stood out to you early on when you're teaching them that that they might be an outlier or that this one's special? Is there certain traits that you notice when you are teaching or interacting with a developing artist?
Yeah. First of all, talent. Put that aside. I mean, that's a given. You got to have that to start with.
Of course.
But then that level-headedness, that persistence, that learning. I remember a very famous artist one time I was talking to him. He said, "My major asset is I know how to meet people." In other words, because you're always around people, you're radio disc jockeys, retailers, a lot of different folks, and how can you meet them socially, gracefully,
right?
And, move on to the next person. So that those social skills are so important.
Right.
Being upbeat, somebody who's too negative ain't going to last long.
True.
But all those social skills that what they call emotional intelligence, that you don't, blow your top when something doesn't go your way and things like that. So, but I think persistence more than anything else is key.
And do you think, given the way technology is taking over everything, do you worry that schools should hold off on adapting that into the curriculum, or do you welcome technology and AI into your curriculum?
You froze on me.
The schools, whatever teachings.
You froze on me. Can you? My phone kept going off. Can you repeat the question? Because I missed.
He froze. Can you hear me?
Some of it.
I can hear you. Something.
Like you're still
here.
frozen.
I think he might be gone. He might have froze.
Oh, we're back. Sorry.
Am I frozen? Okay.
Okay, there we go. We're back.
I missed your question. Yeah, you got frozen there.
Oh, that's okay. I was actually just mentioning with AI and tech shaping music these days, like we had talked about before. Do you worry that schools aren't adapting quick enough, or they should hold off on adapting, those types of things into their curriculum?
I think they should adapt it now because it's the here and now. That's what attracts students.
Yes.
Universities are like a business. They have to attract students to pay tuition, to pay the bills. And so you got to give students what they want. And students, even if they don't end up in the music business, they still, during those teen years, latch on to music. And music business sounds like a good idea. They, if anything, they're behind. Because they're still in music departments, and they're aiming at musicians. And by the way, when you go out, you need to know about union scale, and you need to know those things. Yeah. And the other thing is that the hardest things to teach are the things they need most. Like, how do you teach persistence? How do you teach, the social skills? How do you teach that emotional stability? How do you teach that? So, somebody just has to get it.
That's true. Yeah.
As far as the future with these students, I don't have any problem at all. I have an ongoing philosophy. Everybody's smarter than I am. And they are. In something, they can do stuff I can't do. They know stuff I don't know. And you look at these young people coming in today, and I know it's, I'm around old people. And they say, all these young kids, they can't do anything, and they don't know this, and they don't know that. Yeah. They might not know an act from the 1950s or the 60s or something like that, but they're sharp. They're very sharp. Yeah. They should be a little more literate because I don't think they have as much depth because they don't read as much. But I have no problems with that. They're going to do just fine.
Yeah, well, if they need something to read, there's no shortage of material that you've put out. So maybe just start there if you're listening. It's been amazing chatting with you. I actually hope that we can have you again and go a little deeper on some specific areas. Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you guys. Fun.
It's been, thank you. If we could ask you one more thing. What's next? Like, I know you have the book coming up, but what are some of your future plans? Anything you could share with us, what we can look out for?
Well, I have the Chet Atkins book, and then I've got a book on Bob Dylan and country music coming out. I don't know when that's coming out. And I've been working on some musicals, musical on Minnie Pearl, and then a musical on, it was kind of like set in the 1940s, that pot type sound for that we've kind of lost along the way. I had a student say, I just heard something that was so beautiful, and it names something from the 1940s. And I'm thinking, this generation has lost that. They don't hear that
at all.
So there's something there.
Amazing.
Beautiful.
That's really cool. We'll look out for that. And next time we'll talk a little bit more about the musicals. And I know Deriki's eyes lit up a little bit there. You are a buff. No, thank you so much. This has been great.
All right. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thanks. You as well.
Take care. Until next time, everybody. God bless.
Until next time.